Hello, everyone. Welcome to the QA Therapy Podcast. I'm Daniela Santos, Marketing Operations Specialist at Xray, and today we are doing something special. We are spotlighting our usual host, Sérgio, which is one of the QA therapists and also one of our solution architects here at Xray. Hi, Sérgio. Thank you for being on the other side.
Hi, Daniela. Nice to see you once again.
Sergio is usually one of our interviewers, but today he will be our guest, and we are super excited to hear more about your journey and also about your insights on the software industry. But before digging into that, could you briefly describe yourself and also what brought you into software testing?
How can I describe myself? I'm a big person. I should wait a little less. I'm not running as I should, but that's another topic. I'm 45 and I've been working for almost 20 many years already. So, how did I come to software testing? That's a good topic because I started as in the development space. First as a developer, then as a team lead, and of course, testing was like an implicit part of making products back at the first company where I worked at, Portugal Telecom. And then I moved more to a consulting kind of role. And part of that role was more to advise other teams around good practices. So I learned more about CI, CD, and of course testing in practice and also in theory. That way, I engage a bit more on testing. I try to also to see how we could improve our own process and our own tooling. And that's actually how Xray was actually born there, as we were trying to depict new tools for using company-wide, and we are trying to overcome some of the challenges that we back then, and I mean a bunch of different teams had whenever they are adopting like a mix of approaches for testing, including automated testing and together with manual testing. So we are trying to glue all that stuff, and we found out that we didn't have the proper tools, but also not the proper process in place.
And looking back at when you were younger,
That killed me. Bye bye, Danielle.
uh, did you ever think that now you would be in this role? And did you always have like a keen interest in this field, or it was something really not planned and live and took its path until here?
To be fair, was totally unplanned. I mean, the other day I was looking at some projects that I did many years when I was like 15 or something like that. I did like some sample tools, which back then I was able to publish in a national magazine around the development, and I was looking at the notes of the README file of that tool that I found the other day, and I was talking implicitly about testing. I need to get that code out of the README file because I was telling something like even this was like tested. There's always like room for improvement, and we cannot really cover all the possible use cases. But so that was like a tip that I was going to work in that later on. But when I ended my course back in 2021, 2001, I mean, I didn't have a clue that I would end up like in the software testing field. I was more thinking about how I'll be making like amazing products, like super innovative things, more thinking more like from a creative mindset, more development mindset. But I was not really looking in particular at software testing as a theme where I would focus a big part of my career.
And speaking of products, it's also aligned with one of the topics I wanted to ask you. Once again, still looking back at your career and what you have done so far, what's one project or accomplishment that you are really proud of and that you would like to share with us?
I can tell you a bit of personal and work related. So starting with work related, many years ago, together with other colleagues in the team that I was managing and also actively contributing to, we developed like a framework for instant messaging, well, for short messaging to be more concrete. And we call it like SHAF, it's really a strange name. And it became like a framework that was used across like a bunch of products in many telecom companies worldwide. That I learned a lot from it. Not that I had made like lots of money with it because I was working for a company back then, so the project was not really mine. But we were lucky to have the opportunity to make products, different products on top of that, let's say, framework. Then, like shifting more to a personal side, one thing that I did, like I like to do it every year, there was like a contest going on in Portugal, like a more creative development context, from Sapo, the company. I don't think, I'm not sure if it exists as a company or it's more a brand nowadays. But there was like this geek kind of meeting where like 1,000 people would go there, and there was like 24 hours to code something and to showcase. And I did like one proof of concept of with music and images and fun stuff happening on the screen, put all people dancing. I call it the grid, and that uh, actually was awarded. I think I won like a laptop
Nice
with
award.
it, so it was actually fun. Something like that.
It was a boot camp.
A boot camp, yeah. And then they invited me to do another project where they would mentor me during 1 year. The project had like the same name, the grid, but it was like a totally different application. So it was a desktop application to mount locally the folders from Facebook. So basically the images that we store on Facebook, we could see them locally like in Windows as folders, and we could easily browse the image. So I was able to get that done. I had no users, so it was not really a successful project from a business perspective, but I learned throughout the way, well, also with the mentoring. And a friend of mine, which unfortunately is no longer with us, he actually inspired me to keep that work, no matter where that project would end up. So he sponsored me, I think, with a bunch of euros, not many, but it was more like being supported. Say, Sergio, I'm giving this just for you to keep inspired, and that's the only thing that I got from that. Let's say from in terms of money from that project. That I lucky that I met him, even though he's no longer here. But that is like a personal project, and then finally coming back to the work related also, and I'm not saying this just by saying, but Xray was something that I co-created with other colleagues back then in 2000 and a few years. So and whenever we were trying to find a new tool, later on the team that was developing the Xray, they hired me to become their product manager for the tool, which allowed me to implement additional features and to boost the tool and become like the tool that we know so far. So these are like a bit of the projects that working in my career.
Thank you for sharing those stories, Sergio. You spoke about X-Ray, and now I want to dig in more about the software testing industry and would like to know your inputs about how do you think that the industry has been evolving, and also would like to understand if you think that any trends will shape its future for the upcoming years.
Of course, we cannot, let's say, run away from the AI as a topic. So I think we're still trying to figure out exactly how to embrace AI in different use cases. But I think there's, for sure, there will be a fit for it in the testing field. I've seen some interesting solutions coming out. I've seen other solutions that are not really providing much value. To be fair, so there is still many discovery going on. So technology is always evolving, right? So I remember that I think 20 years. I don't know like the exact time. I was trying like to implement CI/CD using early versions of Docker, where it was really really buggy to use Docker, and now Docker is like a common asset. So things take time to get stable. Some things they go away. Some things they come to stay. And I'm sure that the AI as a broad topic, which is really broad, will stay. The different ways that we can use it, they are so diverse that there's no like a specific use case. Of course, people will probably showcase like, oh, we can generate these test cases using AI and that, but I don't think that's the super amazing fit right now, given the current maturity of the underlying technology. But of course, we'll see AI being adopted more and more. Another thing that comes as a topic that comes a lot during the conversations that I have with the community members, mainly during one events or even online, is exploratory testing as a broad topic. Also, I think like testing itself is exploratory in nature, but highlighting, let's say, exploratory, this way of framing testing highlights like the way that we should embrace testing by playing, by experimenting the product, learning from it, and then trying to uncover risks, important risks that may be hidden there. So that's what we do as humans. We always go a bit beyond. We sometimes we are scared. We meet our challenges and we overcome them. That's also what happens with testing. We try to uncover bits of information. Then sometimes we are afraid of the things that we can uncover with that. But it's important that we uncover these risks up front, right? Then uncovering then later on whenever users are using our products and our systems in important scenarios. So exploratory testing, I think, is for sure like one thing that people will becoming more aware. Not every team is like fully aware of it, unfortunately. So we are doing our best to bring awareness about that testing is not just about executing like predefined steps one after the other one. It's more about learning as you go.
And based on your experience and touching there on exploratory testing, which core benefits do you believe that this approach brings to the table, especially to those who might not be so familiar with this approach?
So if we think about all the possible use cases that our products can have, they are like infinite. We cannot really predict all the different use cases, all the different deployment scenarios where our product will be used on. So even if we have like 100 test cases, it's just will address like a subset of the possible scenarios of how our product will use. And our product is continuously evolving, so we cannot really rely just on some test cases that are pre-written at a given moment in time. So we need to evolve. With exploratory testing, we always go a step further, right? We don't just cover like the happy path and the negative path, where some of these passes, some concrete examples for these passes, whenever we are going through the product, we get ideas and then we think, well, what if, that what if that has been moving civilization forward is what we do in exploratory testing. We do what if, and that what if continuously is what uncovers problems that otherwise we have not thought about. So there are many things that we are not didn't ever thought about. For example, looking at myself, so usability issues, I was not really like totally aware of them 30 years ago. Now I have a more concrete understanding, but of course there are risks and certain kinds of risks that I may not be yet fully aware of them because simply I have not learned about them. So how can we address this? We can learn by learning more about the different types of risks and quality criteria that we should have as a concern. But of course, we can also learn more about the context, the business case that we are trying to target with our applications, and we learn by using the product. It's important that we actually put our hands dirty on the product to understand how the product actually behaves, because sometimes one thing is what is advertised and another thing is actually how it works, right?
Now I want to dig in more about what tools and technologies do you usually like for software testing and why do you prefer using them?
So the first tool that I like for software testing is a human brain.
Good.
Yeah, that's the main tool. I always say though, the other day I was delivering a talk about human-centric exploratory testing because in the end we have to have humans in the center, like in the exploration, because we have so much knowledge. We have in the hand our products will be used by humans, so we need to have the human as the main concern. Of course, we can augment our testing with tools, with software tools. That's not just fun. That's something that we actually need to do because if I'm going to explore APIs, maybe I'll use like tools like Insomnia, Postman, and so many others that are out there that allow me to quickly interact with APIs. So I don't need to make those requests by hand and code them. Maybe for analyzing logs and what is happening in production, maybe I can use a bunch of tools that exist out of the box for doing observability and or monitoring and try to understand patterns and errors that happen in production. Maybe if I want to do performance testing, I'm not going to do performance testing by talking with 1,000 of my friends to do a bunch of requests at the same time. I'll use a tool for that, right? There are specific use cases where I'll use tools and I need to use tools that I feel more comfortable with, right? And that my team also feels more comfortable with. Sometimes people will figure out, okay, maybe for my context makes more sense to use like implement UI based tests using like Selenium because my team is already like proficient using Selenium and Java, and that's fine. But maybe the team is like more proficient in using JavaScript, and well, maybe they want to use like Playwright, and that's even better, probably because maybe the tests run faster and maybe we can do like a bunch of stuff that we cannot do the other way around. We always need to look at the context of where we are of the team and see what fits the team also, right? Just going there and say, oh, you all have to use Java together with this framework. And they all start, oh, but we don't know Java and we don't have time to learn Java. We are very good with using Python. Why cannot we use Python? Right. So there are some things that we need to discuss as a team and not mandate from specific user.
And what's the best advice that you have ever received about software testing?
That's a tough question. The best advice. Well, always be learning because there's always like so much to learn. And there are people like in the community, they inspire us to keep going a bit further by bringing more awareness about specific topics, techniques, or specific risks that we should have in mind. I don't remember like a specific advice given by a specific person, but I think this idea that somehow was embedded on my mind that we should keep learning is like what is crucial for me.
It's super interesting to see that your answer is aligned with what Christian shared in our previous episode. He touched about always learning and he also touched about community. And that's another topic that we can cover. How do you see that the community in software testing has been growing? Do you have any special channels that you like to share with us that you feel that have been really valuable in your journey?
I think when you're like junior tester, someone that joins like the testing field, if you start just by testing and if you're not really curious about digging up more information, you'll miss like a lot of information that is out there, communities that are out there. What I found is that I was not really aware of these communities, so I was one of those people that was not really aware of it. But then I found there's communities like Ministry of Testing. By the way, I'm with a t-shirt of Ministry of Testing today, which is a big online supportive community that has a bunch of content around testing. But there are also many thoughtful leaders like writing about different aspects of testing. Some of these people are just more are writing about the theoretical parts. Some are more like talking about more hands-on kinds of things. We get also like different perspectives. It's always good to have the different perspectives to understand a bit more. So that's something that I learned, so I can have my own perspective based on my own experience and learn with what others have also learned. So Ministry of Testing is one of such communities where you can learn from. Also blogs from well-known people in this space, let's say, that usually do our courses, or sometimes they just spend their whole lives writing and sharing advice around testing. One of these people is Maret, that I learned a lot in the testing space, also in exploratory testing field. But there are many, to be fair. Some people focus more like in a specific aspect. Then you have more test automation kind of communities, which are more focused around like a specific tool. Another community that I have learned a lot from, and they are very also supportive, is the Robot Framework community, that they have their own Slack. Some other communities are more around the GitHub discussions, so you can go there and make a discussion, asking questions about that specific tool. While some communities are a bit more like real time, where you can actually chat. Sometimes they have events where you can attend. It's something that we need to assess and evaluate where we want to focus a bit of our time. I think besides tooling, and test automation tooling is also great. Complement that with more theoretical kind of background in testing. And for that, we have these blogs and also the Ministry of Testing and similar kind of communities out there.
Now I want to switch a bit our main topic of conversation, and I want to dig in more about who is Sergio outside Xray and software testing. Do you have any special hobbies or projects outside of your work that you'd like to share with us?
Well, time is not big enough, but one thing that I'd like to do on weekends, if I have the opportunity, is to showcase my CV to people from outside that come to see it. Aveiro, we call it our own Venice of Portugal, that you also know very well. And that's one thing that I like to do, to tell stories about our lovely city to people, so they can have a good time. And that's mostly it. And as I said, I'm not been running as I should, so that's why I'm like using a Pal Plus kind of a widescreen right now.
I want to talk with you about your experience as a teacher that recently started. How is that experience going on? What have you been learning as a teacher?
Yeah, I was invited to teach also curiously around testing field in the university, in the place where I got my master's. After all these years, I came back to teach around software quality. With a bit more focus on aligning on the test automation part. But the first thing is that we may think that it's like a one-way kind of a direction where the teacher teaches the students, but it's also bi-directional. So you also learned with them. It's like exploratory testing, right? Whenever you are teaching, you need to dive in a bit more about certain themes, about certain tools. You learn a bit more around throughout the way. Students will ask you questions that will make you also question yourself, and then you dive a bit more around that topic. You try to address the challenge and help them. So it's also about being supportive, but it's also about trying to find the best way to pass the message, right? Why is like testing important? Sometimes it's not really easy, but I'm learning, right? So I'm doing my best, and I'm learning throughout the way. Some people were so far, and like the semester is almost ending, they got the idea, they put a bunch of stuff and practice in place, including continuous integration in place and also continuous delivery in place, which is great. Others are like still in their way towards that. That happens, but we are always there to support them as much as we can. It's a new experience that's been part of my career, to look at challenges as a way, not like as a blocker, but as something that we should try to achieve.
I also would like to make you a similar question that I did to Cristiano, which is if you could leave behind one lasting impact or contribution to the field of software testing, what would you want it to be?
If I could leave a contribution to the testing field,
Yes.
tough question, Daniela.
This is a tough one, but I think it's also interesting for people that have been listening to both you and Cristiano and understand how we would like to be, let's say, remembered, or in which specific way you would like to pay back, let's say it like that, to the community.
One thing that is making me really curious for a bit of time is about how can we uncover new information in general? How do we do it like in science? And I've been looking at about how do we address challenges in space? How do we try to find life? How do we try to find new things? And try to think about, is there like some techniques, some ideas that we can use for testing that can expose information that we have not thought about? So how do we learn information? Because it's about the process. How can we uncover information, but also how do we process it, right? Because every single one is unique, but then there's like a process for it, how we understand what's happening. And I've been thinking about, it would be great if we could depict a new way that we can use for testing that can expose important information about risks in our software. I still not really found it. I have just some ideas that we like see being applied in certain parts in testing. Like for example, how do we find there's something happening in the universe? We look at patterns. That's sometimes one of the ways that we look at is we depict patterns. We use like tools to depict patterns, and then if we see like an uncommon pattern, that is like a trigger for further exploration. Maybe there is a problem, maybe there's something new to find. But there are also other ways, and we try. I think when we think about astronomy, is one of these fields where we try to employ different techniques, different tactics to find to expose information, because sometimes we cannot simply go there. That's another challenge. Sometimes we cannot really put our hands dirty on the system. Sometimes we can, but also sometimes we can't. But can we use some other ways to get more insights about the system without really putting our hands dirty in the system? If we can put our hands dirty on the system, what are like different ways of exposing information that we have not yet thought about, right? Sometimes we invest our time just about the specific use cases that we know beforehand, but can we use any special techniques to expose certain information? It's curious that then we look also like at mathematics and things like properties, and then comes like the notion of property-based testing to look if certain properties of the system are being fulfilled or not. That's another way of doing testing. And so there are some ideas that we can collect from different fields that we can adopt in testing. But I'm curious about the things that we are already doing in other fields and the things that we are not still aware of, like other ideas that we could try to tackle.
Now,
If I find
yeah.
something, I will let you know.
Before closing the episode, I have prepared some rapid fire questions. These are the same questions that I did to Cristiano. So let's see if you have any similar answers. And the first one is, if bugs were pets, what kind of bug would you want as a pet?
If bugs were pet, if bugs were a pet, kind of a dog.
Cristiano shared a cat, so different tastes here regarding pets. And the second one is, if you could have dinner with anyone from the testing industry, who would it be?
Oh, a dinner. That's a tough one because I already have I have dinners with some of the people in the testing field. Uh, eh, you're
Yeah.
killing me.
I'm going to give you a free pass because I told Christian that he could choose two people. So if you want to have more than one, you can give us two different names, if that helps.
I think I was already in dinners with Liz Crispin and Janet Gregory. I'm not sure if I've been like on a dinner with Maret. All the moments that I had with Maret, they were like learning moments. So I think that would also be like a learning moment. If a dinner would be like, say, the context.
What's the programming language that you have for automation?
I have a mix. I have a mix. I'm using more nowadays, more Java. But I have like made like dozens of tutorials with all different languages, so it's currently like a mix of Java, JavaScript, sometimes like Python also, if I'm doing like model-based testing. So it's a bit of a mix, but nowadays it's been a bit more Java.
If you could swap jobs with another function for a day, who would it be and why?
For one day, I would switch jobs with Tariq King. Why not? Tariq King is a well-known person on the testing field, more on the AI space. Even though sometimes I'm a bit critical about how people embrace AI, I've also learned a lot on that with Tariq. So I would be interesting to see what people are actually doing with AI, like with one of the person that is investing on it for quite a while.
And if you could test any software from history, what would it be?
If I could test any software from history. Yeah, you're killing me.
Christian talked about a game that he likes. Don't know if it helps about any hobbies that you have. It might be something that you would like to test as well.
One challenging system for testing would be, and surprise, the IRS. It has so many fields, so many rules, and I have my thoughts that it actually works as it should. I'm not saying that I would be like super amazed with it, but it would be interesting, though.
It's so funny to see that these questions are making you and Christian think a bit deeper. That was the goal behind it. And what's the top tip that you have for aspiring software testers?
Two things: read a lot, learn a lot from all different sources, and then put your hands dirty. Because if you just read, like say the theory, that's good, but that's not enough, right? You need to actually experiment and to kind of do this. How the LLM work, like with the feedback loops. So we need to actually train our brain by experimenting. So I would say never be afraid of learning more and trying out new things, new techniques, new tools. Even if the tools they say, oh, these tools will be, let's say, a bit hard to install to get started, but don't be afraid, because if others were able to do it, you are also able to do it.
It's really great to see that our solution architects are so aligned in the answers that they are giving, because Christian shared a really similar answer here. Let's see if you are aligned for the last one, which is, what's your go-to snack during long testing sessions?
Oh man, I'm trying to do diet, Daniela. Well, I usually don't eat while I'm working, so it's not the fact that I'm testing the one that will where that will lead me to get some food. But I always like to. I like more gums. Sometimes if I have gums, I can eat all the gums like right away. But if I don't have gums, I can live without them. So.
Okay, so this was not a common answer, but it's funny to see that's different. I'm not going to tell you what Cristiano told us, so you need to listen the episode. Thank you so much, Sergio, for sharing a bit more about yourself and also about your vision in the software testing industry. I hope you like the experience
Thank
of
you.
being a host and not an interviewer. I know it's different. Stay tuned for more insights and stories for those who have been following the episode and also the podcast. We will see you in our next therapy session, and until then, happy testing.
Happy testing, and thank you, Daniela.